Night before our wedding. I caught Louis hooking up with my best friend on the couch. I completely lost it and ended up sleeping with all 3 of his friends. I made sure to leave proof everywhere. On his desk, in his sports car, at his office. But when Louis found out, he just casually stubbed out his cigarette and got everyone on a group call. You slept with all of them. How was it? Laughter exploded through the phone. Pretty flexible. She was okay. Just a little uptight. Nothing like that actress I've been seeing. Louis, did you never bother with her? She moved like a plank of wood. My whole revenge plan was just a joke to him. He didn't care at all. I fell apart completely. Had a total breakdown and Louis had me committed to a psych facility. I spent a year there. Then finally I got better. Outside my window, a Bentley pulled into the courtyard and stopped. Louis had come to take me home. He still remembered to come for me, but I had already forgotten how to love him. The nurse pushed open the door. Mr. Louis finished your discharge paperwork. You're free to go. I nodded blankly. Walking out, I could hear a few nurses whispering behind me. Poor thing. Her own fiancé drove her to this. What's so sad about it? He's gorgeous and loaded. He even pays for everything. It's not like he hit her. She should have just looked the other way. Some people really don't know how good they have it. A year ago, those words would have sent me spiraling. Now they couldn't even slow my steps. Louis was leaning against the Bentley waiting. I walked over. He reached toward my face. You've lost weight. I tilted my head back slightly. His hand hung in the air for a second, then dropped. He opened the passenger door. Get in. There was a used lipstick on the seat. Louis snatched it out of my hand, rolled down the window and tossed it out. My assistant left that. Don't worry about it. I smiled faintly and said nothing. That lipstick was Mia's favorite brand. My best friend's. Not that it mattered anymore. I'd stopped caring a long time ago. At a red light, Louis drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, then finally spoke. It's over between me and her. I got rid of that couch, got a new one in the style you like. I had the housekeeper keep your things clean every day. Nothing got dusty. Thank you. I smiled softly. Louis glanced over at me, his expression unreadable. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small red velvet box. I had the ring remade, bigger diamond. You like it? I didn't take it. Let's call off the wedding. Louis didn't take me seriously. He just dropped the box in my lap. Enough with the drama. I slept with your best friend. You slept with my 3 friends. And you even came out to a head. Call it even. The spot is my wife is still yours. I promised you that. Stop playing. Hard to get. I stared at the little box and said nothing. Just smiled quietly, bitterly. I wasn't playing anything. I was just leaving, heading somewhere quiet. A small village, nothing like this city where my parents were buried. Place without him, a place where it wouldn't hurt. The car pulled through the gates of the estate. Nothing had changed. I didn't go to our bedroom. I dragged my suitcase toward the guest room. Louis stepped in front of me. What do you think you're doing? I got used to sleeping alone at the hospital. I glanced back at the room that had once been ours. I don't want to sleep in that bed anymore. Day I found out about him and Mia. I checked the security footage. It wasn't just the couch. They've been in our bed too. The one he'd had custom made for me. When I saw that, the pain nearly destroyed me. Louis stared at me for a few seconds, then let out a cold laugh. Fine, but don't push it. You always do this and you always end up back in the hospital. I watched him walk away. The old ache didn't come. Maybe the treatment really had worked. I'd forgotten what it felt like to live and die by his every mood. Late that night, I lay in the soft guest bed, wide awake after a year on a stiff hospital mattress. I couldn't get comfortable. During that year, Louis never visited once. Fear had eaten me alive. I used to scream and beg the doctors and nurses, threatening to hurt myself if they didn't let me call him once, twice, 3 times. He never picked up. Slowly, I went numb, and by the time I got better, I didn't want to call him at all. Thirsty, got up and went downstairs for water. That's when I saw Louis on the balcony on the phone. His voice was low, but I caught every word. Yeah, good girl. Tomorrow at the auction, bid on whatever you want. Don't worry about the price. I know. Things are just a little hectic right now. I can't be with you every second. That soft, indulgent tone. It used to be only for me. I stood behind him, glass in hand, and listened for a moment. Then I decided it wasn't worth my time. I turned to leave Betty. His voice came from behind me. When did you come down? He'd already hung up just now. He started to explain, but I cut him off. I was thirsty, came for water. Don't stop on my account. He moved toward me, reaching out, but I was already halfway up the stairs. At the landing, I caught a glimpse of him from the corner of my eye. He was watching me, the whole way up. The next morning at breakfast, Louis poured me a glass of milk. Old habit. I always used to drink it. He'd watch me with a soft smile. This time I didn't touch it. I poured myself a glass of warm water instead. His smile froze, but he didn't say anything. Louis stood, grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. I need to step out for a bit. Okay. He paused at the door, looking back at me. No questions. I thought about it for a second. Once I would have grilled him. Where are you going? How long? Who with? Somewhere along the way. I turned into someone desperate, terrified of being left behind. But not anymore. No. I said simply. Louis stood there for a few seconds, then left without another word. After he was gone, I went upstairs to finish packing. There wasn't much to take. I left the hospital clothes behind. Too much pain attached to them. I packed my parents' photo and a journal, the one I'd kept at the facility. I flipped through it. Every page had just one line. Called him again today. The 180th time he didn't answer. Treatment was rough. Today I miss mom and dad so much. No one loves me anymore, not even him. It's my birthday today. Nobody remembered. I think it's been 3 days since I thought about him. The doctor said I'm almost healed. I closed the journal and dropped it in the trash. Louis came back soon and brought his 3 friends with him. They went into the study to talk business. The door wasn't fully shut. From the living room, I could catch pieces of their conversation. So how are things with you and Betty? That was Austin, the one who called me flexible. Louis's voice was calm, fine. Then Daniel, the one who called me stiff. She looks normal now, just sitting in the living room reading. Didn't even react when we walked in. I half expected her to flip out. Austin again. Honestly though, that girl Mia, isn't she getting a little too bold? She dropped $700 million on a necklace at the auction today, without blinking. And then she's going around telling everyone you bought it for her. I stood there in the hallway, the polished hardwood floor cold beneath my bare feet. The study door was cracked just enough to let their voices slip through, mingling with the scent of Louis's expensive imported cigars. Let her spend it. Louis's voice drifted out, sounding bored, laced with a familiar arrogance. It keeps her quiet. Betty's back now. I need things smooth. Mia knows her place. She's just throwing a tantrum because I brought Betty home. A third voice chimed in, Cole, the last of the trio I had used in my hysterical, messy attempt at revenge a year ago. You're actually going through with the wedding then? After she, with all of us. There was a brief silence. I imagined Louis sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, swirling amber liquid in a crystal glass, utterly unbothered. She learned her lesson, Louis said, his tone chillingly casual. A year in that ward broke whatever rebellion she had left. You saw her downstairs. She's completely docile. She won't pull a stunt like that again. Besides, her family's connections are still useful, and she looks good on my arm. The wedding is in 2 months. Damn, Lou, Daniel chuckled. You really are ruthless. But watch your back with Mia. $700 million on a necklace isn't just a tantrum. It's a statement. She's marking her territory. My territory is wherever I say it is, Louis replied sharply. Enough about the women. Let's talk about the merger. I didn't stay to listen to the rest. I turned around and walked back to the guest room, my steps completely silent. A year ago, hearing him dismiss my pain so callously would have shattered me. I would have burst into that study, screaming, crying, throwing things, demanding to know why I wasn't enough, why he had to ruin us. I would have begged for a reaction, for an apology, for love. But the hospital had been a very thorough teacher. The agonizing white walls, the heavy medication that made my tongue feel like lead, the nights spent screaming his name until my throat bled, only to be met with the echo of my own voice. It had all scraped me hollow. You can only die of a broken heart once. After that, whatever is left of you is just survival. I walked into the guest room and looked at the small suitcase on the bed. I had barely unpacked. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, sliding the screen open. I transferred the few $1,000s I had in my personal, pre-Louis bank account into a newly created online account. Then I took out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into the wastebasket. I took the red velvet box Louis had dropped in my lap yesterday. The engagement ring. A bigger diamond, he had said. A bribe to cover up the filth of his betrayal. I walked downstairs. The house was enormous, a monument to Louis's wealth, but it felt like a mausoleum. I walked into the kitchen and set the red velvet box gently on the marble island, right next to the glass of milk he had poured for me that morning. The milk I hadn't touched. It had already gone sour. I picked up my suitcase, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. 2 days later, Louis. What do you mean she's not at any of the hotels? Louis barked into his phone, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the steering wheel of his Bentley. Sir, we've checked every luxury hotel, every resort, and all of her old friends' places in the city, his head of security replied nervously. She hasn't used her credit cards. She hasn't accessed her trust fund. It's like she vanished. Louis hung up, throwing the phone onto the passenger seat. He gritted his teeth. Childish, he thought. She's just throwing another childish tantrum. When he had come down from the study 2 days ago and found the house empty, he had almost laughed. He had seen the ring on the counter and the untouched milk. It was a classic Betty move, dramatic, silent protests meant to make him chase her. He had fully expected her to return by midnight, shivering and apologetic, realizing she had nowhere else to go. But midnight came and went. Then another day. Then another. He pulled into the driveway of his estate, the gravel crunching under the tires. The house felt strangely hollow. He walked through the front doors, tossing his keys to the butler. Has she called? Louis asked, loosening his tie. No, Mr. Lewis. No word from Miss Betty. Louis scowled. He marched upstairs to the guest room. It was impeccably clean, stripped of any sign that she had ever been there. He opened the closet. Empty. He checked the bathroom. Empty. His eyes fell on the small, silver wastebasket in the corner of the room. He walked over to it. Inside, sitting on top of a discarded plastic wrapper, was a small, plain notebook. He reached down and pulled it out. The cover was worn. He flipped it open. It was her handwriting, shaky and faint. Day 14. They tied me down today. I kept crying for Louis. Why won't he come? Louis felt a strange, uncomfortable tightening in his chest. He turned the page. Day 45. Called him again today. The 180th time he didn't answer. Day 102. Treatment was rough. Today I miss Mom and Dad so much. No one loves me anymore, not even him. Day 215. It's my birthday today. Nobody remembered. Day 300. I think it's been 3 days since I thought about him. Day 365. The doctor said I'm almost healed. Healing just means you stop feeling the knife, even when it's still inside you. Louis stared at the final entry. The words didn't sound like the fiery, desperate Betty who used to throw plates at the wall to get his attention. They sounded like a ghost. Suddenly, the silence of the house didn't feel like a game anymore. It felt permanent. Sir? The butler stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. Miss Mia is downstairs. She says she needs to speak with you regarding the bill for a yacht charter. Louis's head snapped up. A sudden, blinding rage surged through him. He looked at the journal, then at the empty room. For the first time in his life, Louis felt the icy grip of panic. 6 months later, Betty. The coastal village of Oakhaven was exactly as I remembered it from my childhood. It was a place where the air always smelled of salt and crushed pine needles, where the ocean crashed against jagged cliffs, drowning out the noise of the world. I rented a small, weather-beaten cottage a short walk from the cemetery where my parents were buried. It had a creaky porch and a garden overgrown with wild hydrangeas. It was perfect. I got a job at a local second-hand bookstore owned by a sweet, elderly man named Arthur. My days were beautifully, fiercely mundane. I woke up. I drank black coffee. I walked to the shop. I dusted old spines, sorted donations, and listened to the rain tap against the glass. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody cared about the designer labels I used to wear, or the socialite circles I used to run in. I was just Betty. Sometimes Elias, the local doctor who ran the town's small clinic, would drop by the bookstore. He was tall, with kind, tired eyes and a soft smile. He never pried, but he always brought me a fresh pastry from the bakery next door. You look brighter today, Betty, Elias said one Tuesday afternoon, setting a paper bag on the counter. The ocean air suits you. It does, I smiled, and I realized it was true. The smile reached my eyes. It didn't feel forced. Thank you for the croissant, Elias. Anytime, he said softly, lingering for a moment before heading back out into the mist. I opened the pastry and took a bite, looking out the window. For a long time, I had expected Louis's black Bentley to pull up to the curb. I had expected him to track me down, drag me back, and lock me in his golden cage. But months had passed, and the fear had slowly bled out of me, replaced by a profound, unshakable peace. I didn't watch the news, but Arthur did. Sometimes I couldn't help but overhear the television playing in the back room. That afternoon, a celebrity gossip segment caught my ear. Billionaire CEO Louis Vance continues his downward spiral today following the disastrous fallout with former model Mia Thorne. Thorne, who was sued by Vance for extortion last month, leaked a series of audio recordings to the press, exposing Vance's illicit business dealings with 3 of his closest associates, Austin Meyer, Daniel Cho, and Cole Hastings. The trio has since been ousted from their respective boards, and the resulting legal battles have tanked Vance Corp's stock by a staggering 30%. I paused, a dust cloth in my hand. Sources close to the billionaire say Vance has become increasingly erratic and reclusive, reportedly firing his entire staff, and offering a massive private bounty for information regarding his ex-fiancée, who vanished without a trace 6 months ago. Arthur walked out from the back, shaking his head. These city folks, he muttered. Too much money, no sense. Destroying each other over nothing. I looked at the television screen. They flashed a recent paparazzi photo of Louis. He looked dreadful. His sharp jawline was covered in rough stubble, his eyes dark and hollow. He looked like a man being eaten alive from the inside out. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. I waited for the pang of sympathy, or the flare of vindictive triumph. I waited for the old Betty to rear her head and feel something. But there was nothing. Just empty air. I turned off the television. Just noise, Arthur, I said quietly, going back to dusting the shelves. Just noise. 10 months later, the confrontation. The storm rolled in on a Thursday evening. The sky bruised into a deep purple, and the wind howled off the Atlantic, shaking the windows of the bookstore. I was locking the front door, pulling my heavy wool coat tight around my shoulders, when the headlights blinded me. A car had pulled up right to the curb. It wasn't just any car. The sleek, predatory lines of the black Bentley stood out like a sore thumb against the backdrop of Oakhaven's rusty pickup trucks and muddy roads. My breath hitched for a fraction of a second. Then my heart steadied. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out into the pouring rain. He didn't have an umbrella. He was soaked instantly, his expensive wool suit clinging to his frame. It was Louis. He stood by the car, staring at me through the deluge. He looked older. The arrogance that used to radiate from him like a force field was entirely gone, replaced by a raw, naked desperation that made him look small. I finished turning the key in the lock, slipped it into my pocket, and turned to face him. I didn't move toward him. I just waited. He crossed the sidewalk, stopping a few feet away. His chest heaved as he looked at me. He took in my worn boots, my simple coat, the total lack of makeup on my face. I found you, he choked out, his voice barely audible over the wind. You did, I replied calmly. He took a step closer, raising a trembling hand as if to touch my face, but he stopped short, as if he knew he would be burned. You didn't leave a trail. You didn't touch the accounts. I tore the world apart looking for you, Betty. Why? I asked. The question wasn't laced with malice. It was genuine curiosity. Louis flinched. Why? Because you're my fiancé. Because you belong with me. I was wrong, okay? I was out of my mind. Everything went to hell after you left. Mia, the guys, it was all garbage. It was all fake. I fired them all. I ruined them, Betty. For you. I destroyed them for what they did to you. They didn't do anything to me, Louis, I said softly, the rain matting my hair to my cheeks. I chose to sleep with them. I did it to hurt you. But you didn't care. Remember? I cared, he screamed, the sudden volume startling a bird from the awning above us. He dropped to his knees right there on the wet concrete, the water pooling around his slacks. I cared. I was just too damn proud to admit it. When you slept with them, I wanted to kill them. I wanted to burn the city down. But I couldn't let you see that you had power over me. So I punished you instead. I locked you away. I thought if I broke you down, you'd never be able to leave me. He looked up at me, tears mixing with the rain on his face. He was pathetic. The great Louis Vance, begging in the mud. I read the journal, Betty, he sobbed. I read every word. I'm so sorry. I'm so damn sorry. Please, come back to me. I'll give you anything. I'll build you a new house. We'll leave the country. Just look at me the way you used to. Please. I looked down at him. I remembered the nights in the hospital, the way the leather restraints bit into my wrists, the way the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead while I screamed his name into the void. I remembered the absolute certainty that I was dying, and that the man I loved was the one holding the pillow over my face. Louis, I said, my voice cutting through the storm, clear and steady. Get up. He hesitated, then slowly climbed to his feet, a spark of desperate hope flashing in his bloodshot eyes. Betty. Look at me, I commanded. He met my eyes. What do you see? I asked. He swallowed hard. I see the woman I love. My wife. I shook my head slowly. No. You see a ghost. The girl who loved you. The girl who would have done anything for a crumb of your attention. The girl who went insane because of your cruelty? She died in that hospital. You killed her. Don't say that, he pleaded, reaching out to grab my wrist. I didn't pull away. I just looked at his hand on my arm, and then looked back up at him. Do you feel my pulse racing, Louis? Do you see any anger in my eyes? Any hatred? He stared at my face, searching desperately for a crack in my composure, for a tear, for a scream. But there was nothing. I don't hate you. I told him, the ultimate truth finally spoken aloud. Hatred requires passion. It requires caring. I feel absolutely nothing for you, Louis. You are a stranger to me. If you died tomorrow, I wouldn't even go to the funeral. He stumbled back as if I had shot him in the chest. He let go of my wrist, his mouth opening and closing in silent horror. You thought you broke my rebellion, I continued quietly. You didn't. You just broke my capacity to feel you. You can buy all the rings in the world, you can destroy your friends, you can ruin Mia, but you can't buy back something that no longer exists. You can't mean that, he whispered, his entire body trembling. You're punishing me. This is your revenge. It's a trick. My revenge was sleeping with your friends on our couch, I said. This isn't revenge, Louis. This is just the end. I turned away from him and began walking down the street, toward my cottage. Betty, he screamed, his voice cracking. tearing at the seams of his throat. Betty, don't leave me. Please. I can't breathe without you. I have nothing. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I heard him fall to his knees again. I heard the wretched, agonizing sobs of a man who realized he had held a diamond in his hands and crushed it into dust, only to realize too late that he had cut his own veins on the shards. Epilogue. 2 years later, the sun shone brightly over Oakhaven. I sat on the porch of my cottage, a sketchpad on my lap, drawing the wild hydrangeas that had bloomed in vibrant shades of blue and purple. The ocean breeze played with the hem of my sundress. The front gate clicked open. Elias walked up the path, carrying a familiar white paper bag from the bakery, and something else, a small, slightly muddy golden retriever puppy wiggling in his other arm. I found this little guy wandering near the clinic, Elias smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Thought you might want a companion. Since you know your house is too quiet. I set my sketchpad down and laughed, a bright, genuine sound that echoed across the yard. I walked down the porch steps and took the puppy from him. It immediately began licking my face, its tail wagging furiously. He's perfect, I said, looking up at Elias. Elias stepped a little closer. He reached out, gently tucking a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His touch was warm, safe, and deeply kind. There were no mind games, no tests of loyalty, no shadows. Just light. Are you free for dinner tonight? Elias asked softly. I'm making my infamous seafood stew. I smiled, feeling a soft flutter in my chest that I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. It was the feeling of life. I'd love that, I said. Later that evening, while the stew simmered on the stove, I tossed an old newspaper into the fireplace to get the kindling going. For a split second, before the flames consumed the paper, I caught a glimpse of a small headline in the business section. Former billionaire Louis Vance committed to long-term psychiatric care facility. I stared at the words for a moment as the fire licked at the edges of the paper. I watched the letters curl, turn black, and dissolve into ash. I didn't feel a pang of pity. I didn't feel a rush of satisfaction. I just reached for the poker, stoked the fire, and went back into the kitchen where Elias was laughing, completely and utterly free.